I'm going to talk today about a very important type of contract which causes problems all the time. It's people contracts. Contracts where it's not clear if the person that's been hired is an employee or a contractor. People seek to avoid legal cost and complexity, and it's understandable that they then think that perhaps it's best to just get on with the job and not let contracts get in the way. This is actually not a good idea when it comes to people contracts. There are rare instances where I, as an advisor, am more than happy to say to a client, don't worry about the contract with the person you want to work with at this stage, just go ahead. But they are rare instances. For those people who decide to go ahead without a contract when they're engaging people, it's a lot more risky, and there are instances where it's higher risk, and that is often, in fact, when you're dealing with friends or relatives. So I'm going to walk you through some differences between employer contracts and contractor agreements, and then provide an indication as to how to best approach the whole area of people contracts. Now, employment contracts have the features of there being a person who's receiving a salary or a wage. You've also got super, you've got holiday pay, and you've got various types of records that the law requires an employer to keep when they're hiring an employee. Contractor arrangements are different. In contractor arrangements, you have a person who needs work done by a human being, and you have the person who's going to do the work, who is the contractor. In these contractor arrangements, the person who wants the work done doesn't have to pay something which we call a wage or a salary. Instead, you pay a fee, doesn't have to pay superannuation, doesn't have to pay holiday pay. So contractor arrangements can sometimes have the flexibility of being useful for short-term arrangements or specific jobs that need doing. Now, deciding whether you go with an employee agreement or a contractor agreement is a function of business needs, and that's what should determine how you choose whether in a given instance you're going to have an employment arrangement or a contractor arrangement. Now, if you're running a business, it's probably a good idea to not have to make this decision each time, but instead to work with a library of templates. So I ask you, are you working with advisors who can customize documents to suit your arrangements so that you have a set of documents that relate to employee arrangements and a different set that relates to contractor arrangements? If the answer to that is yes, then the next question is, do the various documents that you have work together as a system so that they are easy to implement? Because if they don't, then what you really do need is a set of templates that work together that make your life easy so that you can achieve the two sides of the fence, meaning on the one side you can save time and therefore money, and on the other side you can actually work towards developing assets without having to worry about the difference between the employment and contractor agreement types. Because the key worry I find as an intellectual property specialist is that people hire programmers, photographers, text writers, and other people to do creative work, and they assume that the creative work will be their own, when very often the fact that people have worked with either an employee or a contractor can mean that there are issues in terms of the ownership of intellectual property. So while it is safer in terms of intellectual property ownership to have employees create it, the reality actually is that in today's world it's far safer to have employment contracts as well as contractor agreements. So if you want to have these developed, I'd be happy to talk to you. And if you want to study more about this subject, you'll find a link to various articles nearby. So thank you for listening, and good luck with your people contracts.